Hello, everyone. Good morning, almost afternoon. Welcome to our first quarterly G-Spec meeting. And if you guys don't mind, please go ahead and just put your name and affiliation into the group chat, just so we can go ahead and keep track of the folks that have joined today, whether you're a G-Spec member or not. We're just going to give it another minute or so while we have friends still joining us, and then we're going to get started. And I will also include the agenda, which is on the Water Resources website. I will include the agenda right now in the chat for folks to follow along.
Sure.
Marisa, hello. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. All right, can everyone see that okay? Awesome, awesome, thank you. Hi everyone, good afternoon. I am excited to be here with you all today. We have a GSP that's turned in, so we're going to be talking about some next steps as it relates to our Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan and our advisory committee. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start out with agenda item number 1. If you're following along, again, that agenda is in the group chat. If you guys don't mind, again, just muting yourself, we will have ample time for Q&A. And of course, I'm going to kindly ask, especially the G-Spec members, this is going to be an engaging discussion. So if you could please kindly keep your camera on if you have the abilities, and then just be engaged throughout today's discussion. So I'll be leaning on you all heavily to hear from you, receive input, and again, as we plan for the implementation part of our GSP. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hi everyone, Marina Delajanis, Deputy Water Resources Director for the Lake County Watershed Protection District, lead of the Big Valley GSP and G-Spec, excuse me. And I'm gonna go ahead and call on my fellow G-Spec members, those that are returning for this next phase. And we're gonna start with Brenna Sullivan. Are you present?
Good morning, Marina, I'm here.
Good morning, Brenna. David Wise with Bella Vista Farming.
Good morning, yes, I'm here.
Good morning, David. Marina, hi. Pat Scully with Scully Packing Company.
Yep, I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, Pat. Peter Windrum with the Chi Council for the Clear Lake Hitch.
Here.
Awesome. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Marina.
And we have Sarah Ryan with Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians.
Sorry, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah. Scott Hornig with Special Districts.
Good morning.
Good morning, Scott. And Valerie Nixon, or alternate, with the Lake County Land Trust.
It's Val Nixon, I'm here.
Hi, Val. All right, so you folks may be aware we have a few open seats, which we will be getting down to later in the agenda. So we're gonna go ahead and shimmy on over, review and approve January 28th, 2022 G-Spec meeting minutes. Will, if I could please have you include those minutes in the chat, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull up those minutes since we did get those to folks later than anticipated. Let me pull those up 1 second. And I'll give folks about another minute or two to review those minutes.
They're not on your screen if that's what you're trying to do.
Yes, I'm pulling them up right now, Sarah, sorry. All right, can folks see those okay? Cool. Thank you. So we'll just give it a minute or two. And then if any G-Spec members have any comments or questions on the summary, we will take those now. And then after we give it a few minutes, I am looking for a motion to approve and then a second.
Marina,
Yes.
I do see one error.
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
And it might have been, I might have misspoke, or I'm not sure, but it's the paragraph that is on the page right now. It starts with Ryan commented. Yeah. So the data is collected every 15. The data is collected every hour. It's not every 15 minutes.
Okay, we will
Yeah.
make that edit. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from G-Spec members regarding the January summary? All right, I'm going to stop my screen so I can see you all. Are there any comments or questions from G-Spec members? If not, I'll open it up to the public. Are there any questions or comments from the public regarding the meeting summary from January 28th? Thank you, Will, for submitting that into the chat. All right, seeing none, Sarah, we did collect your comments, so I'm looking for G-Spec members to approve the January 28th, 2022 G-Spec meeting minutes with the revision from Sarah Ryan that the data is collected every hour in lieu of every 15 minutes. Do I have a motion of approval?
Marina, this is Brenna. I'll move to approve the minutes with the aforementioned.
Thank you, Brenna. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second Val Nixon.
Thank you, Val. All right, let me go back to sharing my screen. All right. All right, so the minutes have been approved. Thank you all. And then before we get going on our Big Valley Groundwater updates, we have some new faces that are joining us today. So I want to go ahead and acknowledge those folks and welcome them aboard to our G-Spec meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Marissa Reyes, which this is really, really exciting. Marissa and I go way back to our AmeriCorps Civic Spark days. So it's nice to see Marissa again. And Marissa, you all are very familiar with Maritza, who was previously with Christy and did an awesome job of taking our minutes. And I know that Marissa is going to do just as an exceptional job. So welcome, Marissa, if you want to say hi to everyone, not to put you on the spotlight, but we're excited to have you here.
That's all right. You're more than welcome to put me on the spot. Thank you, Marina. This is really exciting to work with you. I will be supporting Christy taking over from Maritza. Our cubes back in the office are actually right next to each other. So we love to confuse people. If you get my name wrong, I'll completely understand. So yeah, my name is Marissa Perez Reyes. I've been with Stantec for coming up on a year. We're rounding up here, but to Marina's point, I was a Civic Spark Fellow a couple of years back, working on the IRWM program. And then I worked for DWR for a moment. And now I'm mostly, my work at Stantec is supporting groundwater basins and complying with SGMA and public engagement. So I will just be taking notes today, but I'm excited to get to know all of you and to support the wonderful work you're doing.
Thank you, Marissa. We're excited to have you here. And then we have two additional faces that are on this call today, two other county folks. So folks have met Laura Hall, but I'm going to pass it over to Laura Hall. I invited both Laura and Craig Weatherby. Laura is with Community Development Department and then Craig with Environmental Health, hoping that they are able to join in our fun discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Laura. If you want to say hi to the G-Spec members, and then we'll piggy on over to Craig to do a brief introduction as well.
Yes, hi, this is Laura Hall. I'm with the Planning Department, Community Development Department. I just started about over a week ago, took over the natural resources project. So I'll be joining in these meetings and hopefully providing some input on the Big Valley groundwater updates. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. We're happy to have you here. And then
Thank you.
Craig Weatherby, if you are available to do just a quick introduction and say hi to folks.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, Craig Weatherby, Lake County Environmental Health Department. I'm coming into this project pretty much today. So really I'm in the learning phase to kind of figure out what role we can use to support. And that's really what I'm here to do, is to support water quality and their efforts and try and get this done.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. And thank you to our new faces for joining us. Again, everyone is welcome. So if there's other folks that you feel that need to be involved, again, we'll get to that later on in the agenda, but everyone is welcome, and the more the merrier. So we're going to go ahead and go over to agenda item 3, just for a very brief update of our Big Valley groundwater updates. As always, we like to just highlight any dry well reports that have been reported. Here is a screenshot, as you folks can see, of the dry well reporting from the state of California DWR. Here's the link if folks are interested in looking at that. But one thing that I would like to highlight here is that there have been no additional reports in the last 30 days. And then here is just a screenshot of our Big Valley Basin, an inset map of our Big Valley Basin to give us an idea where those wells are reported in our groundwater basin. I have not received any additional updates. I know that we are starting an internal database and just collecting any sort of dry well reporting that has been reported to us. Even if we aren't providing an APN, we still want to collect that. So since our last G-Spec meeting, I have not been informed of any additional wells. Craig, not to put you on the spot, I don't know if you've received any additional dry well reports.
No, environmental health has received no reports.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to continually update this, but I just wanted to highlight that the reports are still standing. We still have resources on our water resources website. If you hear of any reports, please give us a call. Please give me a call, and we are more than happy to track that. So if you guys hear anything, please feel free to pass my information along to the community or submit those reports directly to myself. Any questions on the dry well reports? All right. Oh, Sarah, yes.
Not questions, but just a comment. I just want to thank you for, it just seems to be more organized this time, and you know, with Craig reporting on it, and you know, the county developing an internal dry well reporting mechanism. I think that's really good. I want to applaud you for that. I consider it progress, and it's great. So just thank you. I'm impressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, and I'm hoping by our May meeting, we have at least some sort of the structure of the tracking that we have, so we can share with you all on any additional updates and show you the progress that we've made for that. And I see a hand raised. David, go ahead.
Yes, I just wondered on these dry wells, does anyone investigate what the cause is? Because it's hard for me to, I mean, unless there's a problem with the well itself, it's pretty hard for me to envision what the, you know, why they're dry this time of year. And given the rain that even though it hasn't happened lately, the fact that we've had, you know, way more rain this year than last year. And I'm just curious as to the causes, or is there any further detail about these dry wells?
Yeah, so the reports that are reported to this dry well tracking, I don't believe DWR goes and investigates these. This is just a simple understanding of here's a rough idea of the wells that are reported. So I don't believe there's actually investigation. That might be something that maybe down the line, that's something that I would like to do within our county, at least if we get a better idea of where these wells are being reported, more information on them. That's why it's so important for us to get all the information that we can on these wells that are reported dry, so we can ideally go out there and do some investigation. So David, to answer your question, to my knowledge, there is no actual investigation of the wells that are reported. This is just a simple tracking that is community-based, so leaning on the community to submit these reports.
Marina, we have
Thank
two
you.
hands up. We'll go with Craig and then we'll go with Val.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, So when EH receives any reporting, we do not do any investigative portion on it. However, we do try to get some base data from the reporting party as to depth of well, how long has the condition been this way, things like that. The overwhelming majority for the wells that we took in really came down to, it was very shallow wells. Folks didn't have a really deep well, so we didn't really have any great data to suggest long-term effects or deep wells were truly affected. But we do try to get some base data when we get started.
Thank you, Craig. Val, and then Sarah will get you next.
This is just a simple sort of question. If somebody reports their well dry, when it fills back up, do they report that it's filled back up? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question, Val. So to us, I have not received any updates from any of the well owners of, oh, my dry was well at this point, but now it's filled back up. So I have not received any reports. I don't know if Craig, if your team has received any updates. And I don't believe that there is an ability to update on the dry well tracking. And I know we have some friends from DWR on the call, so feel free to interject at any point during this discussion.
In environmental health, we've received no calls letting us know of any updates as to when the wells were watered again.
And
Marina, do we have current water level? Are we checking that? Have we come back to normal springtime water levels in the wells? Is there someone?
Yeah, I can say based on the last monthly well run that I did. So the first week of February, I went out and we are seeing pretty characteristic water levels of a normal year. I would say around 20 to 25 feet depth of water level of the 10 wells that I check in the Big Valley Basin. I'll be doing the whole countywide well run the first week of April. I'm going to be sending out letters to all the well owners in the next couple weeks, informing them. And then, but we have seen quite a big return in water levels since the fall and the summer water levels.
Fairly normal.
Yeah, very characteristic of an average year, I would say right now. Nothing that I would suggest. And after speaking to some of the well owners, I haven't heard any other problems or issues or kind of lower water levels, not that I've seen.
Thank you.
And to follow up with David's question, David, some of these points that are on this map may well be before the big rains happened in December, because they're back farther. So that may be the case as well.
All right. Any other questions regarding the dry well tracking? Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think it would be good to get some more information from DWR about how they operate this, and that could help answer some of the questions that people had. And I do see in the screenshot you have that they have a resolved component as well. And, I think their system is as good as the information that gets put in. And if we're going to be encouraging people to report on this, then it would be good to fully understand how they do it. And then also, I don't know, I always think it's great if DWR needs some recommendations, on how to improve or, how to slightly tweak it so that it works a little better with how the counties are taking in information, then we should offer that as well. So I don't know if is the dry well reporting going to be a part of some outreach that the county is going to be doing? And if so, can you follow up with DWR about how this is being used and tracked?
Yes. Yeah, and that's a great point, Sarah. So, this information is only as good as what we get, right? So we also need to be liaisons to share with our community on how to utilize this resource. So this is a good point to share. So what my objective is I'm planning on going back before the board of directors next month just to do a drought update. It's been a while. So what my plan is also to walk through this dry well reporting. So I'll be reaching out to DWR just to get a better understanding of the tracking, what their objective is, and most importantly, how we can share with the community to utilize this resource and other additional resources. Because it'd be really nice to see some of those resolved numbers spike up with our county, and then how does DWR utilize this? So I will also give an update. I'll probably reach out to the Big Valley listserv and just share with you all when that presentation is going to be. I'm looking at the second week of March, I'm anticipating, if not no later than the third week, but that's just going to be an override countywide update on drought and whatnot. And Craig doesn't know this yet, but I'll be reaching out to you, Craig, to provide some assistance with that with that update. So I'll let everyone know, and we're going to go dive deeper into, unintended, into drought and its impacts on the county and next steps. So all right. So seeing no other questions or comments, we are going to go ahead and just do a very brief update on our technical support services. So William Fox has been taking the lead on this, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Will to just give us an update on our TSS services.
Yep, nothing much has changed since the last update I gave you. I haven't heard back. I actually sent an email today just checking on the status of this, reminding them to make sure there's no requirements that we need that we haven't provided to them. Kind of like this map pictures, we selected county-owned parcels. And so a lot of the well selection was just based on where we had county-owned parcels for these wells. I know I did reach out to the land trust as well because we wanted to put some wells close to the lake to better understand that groundwater surface water interaction. I know Sarah briefly, I think quite a while ago, was stating some of the really interesting work she was doing about cyanobacteria occurring in the wells. And so we do really want to partner with that and increase our monitoring on that. And hopefully we can get some agreement in place too, if we put these monitoring wells in, to allow Sarah and Big Valley to continue that monitoring, because I think that is really crucial, really interesting and important. And so if you'd like more information, all the parcel numbers are on here, but I can also send this in a more readable format if you'd like. But again, we're still looking forward to this. I don't have any more specific info as it relates to how many wells or the definite yes or no from DWR. But our consultants did get to speak with Debbie Spangler from DWR and said that it's on their to-do list to get back in contact with us. And again, these should be going in, hopefully, if we get approval for them sometime in the summer.
Yeah, and with that, so, Will has been doing an awesome job of following up with DWR, but DWR has been doing an exceptional job of, coming back to us, engaging in this dialogue. So we know we're not forgotten. We know it's on our priority list, and just another appreciation for DWR and all the support that they've been able to provide us during this entire GSP development implementation. So this is going to be a fun project, and we're looking forward to providing an update on this update. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I just recall from the last meeting that there was some discussion about the once the funding got approved, that there would be an opportunity to review the potential location of these monitoring wells to ensure it's getting the type of data that's really going to be useful for groundwater protection. So I'm not really seeing that on this slide. I just want to make sure that's still the plan.
Yeah, and so nothing's been approved, but definitely if you want to reach out to me directly and I can give you some more exact locations. Nothing's been set in stone. From my understanding, DWR actually wants to come out and scope the sites themselves first prior to confirming on anything anyway. So nothing has been set in stone. Again, it's just based on the parcel level at this point. So we'll know better in the future when DWR reaches out again. And I know getting these wells in the right location is going to determine if we get useful or not useful data. So definitely want to include everybody that would like to be part of that decision-making process. So again, just reach out to me if you want some specific information. I can even send over our application if you'd like to review that. But yep.
All right, thank you, William. All right, so we are going to go ahead and move over to agenda item 4, which is our GSP submission and next step. So, yay, we were able to submit our GSP by the January 31st, 2022 deadline. Huge kudos to you all. I know it was a very heavy lift on reviewing all the documents and providing input on this. So major applause, round of applause, huge weight lifted off, but now the fun starts, right? So we have a second to breathe, and then we're going to keep going towards the implementation. So that is officially on the GSP portal, but I just want to give another round of applause and appreciation for you all, the Gspac members that helped us with this, provided input, provided expertise, and comments to this GSP, and then also to our consultants who really carried the weight in making sure that we had everything submitted. As we all remember, during our January 28th deadline, we were having hit some snafus in the actual portal because technology was doing its thing, but we were able to overcome those and submit it by the deadline. So thank you to all, very exciting. And with that being said, our GSP is officially on the DWR Sigma portal. So here I will go ahead and click on this link in a moment just to walk you all through the portal. But just as a reminder, during the entire time during our GSP development and implementation, the G-Spec members had a chance to review all the chapters, same with the public. So although we had a variety of public comment periods, this public comment period is facilitated by DWR. So if you submit a public comment, you have to do it in their portal. They have resources for us to utilize and for the community to utilize. I'm planning on releasing a press release on behalf of the county just to remind folks that the 75-day public comment period window is open until the end of April and how you can submit it. And these resources are available in English and Spanish. And let's go ahead and click on it. So we have a link to the portal on our water resources website. So if you go back to where we've been uploading all of our GSP stuff, we have a link to the Sigma portal. So that's where you can find our final GSP is via the Sigma portal. This is how the portal looks. Please note that you do not need an account to submit a comment. It'll take you right to our Big Valley GSP. You can see the other 65 GSPs that are submitted as well. So DWR has their hands full. I am not jealous of them in this task that they have before them. So you can see if there's any public comments already submitted. Here's the entire GSP document, elements of the plan, and of course, all of our resources that we utilized for the development of our GSP and the links to those resources. So also note that once you do submit a public comment, that is a public record and everyone in the world can see that comment. So it's a relatively easy process. They make it as easy as possible. Are there any questions on that? Sarah.
My question is, could you explain the process, or do you know about the process of DWR in terms of getting comments and, you know, do they respond to those comments? Does the county respond to those comments? Is there an approval process by DWR after those comments? And, you know, can you go in that direction and explain that?
Yeah, so it takes some time, of course, as you can imagine, for them to review all the comments. Christy, I'll be leaning on you for any additional information on this, but DWR will reach out to the county, the plan manager, which will be myself, with any additional comments. And if there's anything that they find that we need to address or any comments anything that from the public comments that are brought to their attention, I believe we have 180 days to add any more information or respond to those comments via DWR. And then that way they'll take, what are the comments, any additional responses that we had or any information that they needed additionally. And then that's where they take the time to actually deem if our GSP is approved or disapproved. But Christy, please feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, I think, Sarah, you may be asking, does it run like a traditional public comment process where they're compiled and then answered back to like that? And my understanding that it is not, but what happens is that they take those public comments and envelop it in their review. And then that becomes part of the review that then they turn back out to say that either the GSP is favorably reviewed or that it needs to have some type of attention to things. And then those are listed in the type of things. So that it's not formal like an EIR process, like some of the other ones are, where you get back a direct response to it, but they all get folded in together and do come out as part of the report that DWR uses to analyze the overall GSP. So, and that may take some time, you know, for some of the initial folks that put in their 2020 plans, they almost went the full 2 years to review some of those plans to give feedback. I'm not guessing that that's going to be the same. DWR has done a heroic lift of having to sift through all of these and give them some thoughtful process. But what we'll see is we'll see the return from DWR with that analysis of what the public has put into it. So you will get a response. It just won't be that kind of call and response type thing that we've seen with some of the others. And, you know, like ours, we had the matrix that got developed. There won't be a direct one-to-one like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Any other questions or comments regarding DWR's 75-day review period? No? All right. Yay, exciting stuff. So let's go ahead and look at our timeline. So you all have seen this timeline before. This is just an overview of our Sigma implementation. We kind of bypassed this, you know, area, hence the reason why we had such a quick timeline. So as you can see, the majority of the work is ahead of us. So we're transitioning from the planning to the implementation, the boots on the ground, getting the work done. So once our plan is approved, okay, so how do we actually sustain, you know, maintain sustainability in our groundwater basin from the years to come? And Sigma, you know, they put this end date, please see my, you know, air marks, end date of 2042, but you know, we're looking beyond that, right? And that's the whole purpose of Sigma. Is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. This is a long-term thing, and that's our objective here with the county. So you can see this big star that highlights where we're at. So we had 0.1 second to take a breath, and now we're in the process of developing our annual report. So we're leaning on our consultants to provide assistance with our annual report. Which is due April, and then we're going to keep going on. So again, leaning on you all to make sure that we maintain sustainability. How it's gonna look, that's what we're gonna figure out together, but it's gonna be really exciting. As I've stated in previous discussions, my objective is, yes, to make sure we maintain sustainability in our Big Valley Basin. But one thing that I'm excited about with this whole Sigma process is it's really helping us get going and making some major headway and progress on our greater countywide sustainable groundwater management effort. So I do see a hand raised. Before I keep rambling, I'm going to go ahead and call on Peter. Oh, you're on mute, Peter. It's okay.
Sorry. Quick question.
Yes.
How is it that this has just been completed, but now there's an annual review report due in April? I guess I don't understand that.
Yeah, so that has always been a requirement of Sigma. We knew that this was going to come. We knew that this was a thing. And the whole point of the annual report is just, okay, you submitted your GSP. Here's the updated data, because that's the whole purpose of it, right? In our GSP, we outline any data gaps that we have. It's a routine updating of the information that we have available. So we knew that this was coming. This wasn't a surprise. We had anticipated it. So they lay it out very clearly. You have an annual report. And then with the GSP as well, we have updates that we have to do every 5, et cetera, amount a year. So
I guess the question is, why is not the first update 1 year from now, as opposed to just a month or two? What's the connection? I don't know that.
I've asked that very question myself, Peter. So I think they're just trying to get everybody on a reporting system. So everybody who's done the 2021s had to do the same thing. They had to. And really what it does is it actually looks back a couple of years, but it just sets a baseline for the first year and then carries forward from there.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
it's okay. I was like, Peter.
The wrong one. All right, thank
All
you.
right. Any other questions or comments regarding the Sigma timeline? Nope. All right. So now we're gonna move on over to agenda item 5 on the during our meeting, and we are going to be talking about the evaluation of our G-Spec during our GSP development. So now I would like to take the next few slides just to really interact and open up some dialogue with you all. I won't make you do anything super crazy like do a funny jump and dance, but I will have some questions along the way and really curious to hear from you all. So this G-Spec is ours, right? We're a community, we're a team. How do we want to format this? So as we acknowledge, we were on a very quick timeline. We got the job done, which is awesome, but we have some time to make sure we do this how we want to do it. And I really want to lean on you all, engage with you all to make sure that we do this how you guys deem appropriate. So just looking at some of the work that we've done this past year, it seems like 10 years, but what we've done, what we've been able to accomplish in our G-Spec. So again, we've had a total of 11 G-Spec meetings. We met on a monthly basis. We had 9 technical subcommittee meetings, and we had G-Spec members participate in those, but of course, those are also open to the public. So we had public participation in some of those subcommittee meetings. You did not have to be a G-Spec member to sit on that sub-technical committee meeting. Of course, you all reviewed and helped draft every part of the Big Valley GSP. You guys carried a lot of the workload on that. So again, huge kudos to you all. We had 2 field day visits where we were able to meet with our consultants, get out in the field and actually see the work that we were doing, see some of the plans and the proposed projects, and get out in the field and show them how wonderful our Big Valley Basin is. And then of course, you all consulted frequently with our technical team. They were here at every G-Spec meeting. They were able to respond to your emails and available whenever you guys needed to answer any questions, walk you through any part of the GSP, and be there as a support system for us. So now here's where I would like to open up the dialogue. So just reflecting on the work that we were able to get done this past year. So I want us to go around. I'm not going to call on anyone. I'm just going to be leaning on you all to voice any input that you would prefer. But what are some of our successes? What were some of the things that we were able to acknowledge? I think our biggest success was we were able to develop and submit the GSP by the deadline, which I think a lot of folks around the state thought was impossible, but we showed them wrong. What were some of our challenges? We all, been able to share some of the challenges that we had with that. We had a very, very quick timeline. We were all rushing to the finish line to get this GSP submitted. So it took a lot of effort on your guys' end to be engaged. And we understand that it was a hefty workload in a very quick time frame. And then how was the process? How was the process of these G-Spec meetings? Is there something you would like to see different? Is there something that you like? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and go back to question number 1. So just hearing from you all, and please feel free. I'm sharing my screen, so it's hard to see you all, but feel free just to interject. What are some of the successes that you all deemed G-Spec members that we were able to meet this year? Not all at once, don't worry.
Marina, this is Brenna.
Hi, Brenna.
I just wanted to comment because I know kind of during the last few meetings, there have been a number of comments about how rushed this was. We didn't have a lot of time with the with the hydrogeologic model, especially towards the last few months when we were trying to wrap this up and get it to the Board of Supervisors. But I really want us to all keep in mind that it wasn't just a year, it was really 9 months that we had to formalize this group and get something on paper that is trying to work with the data we have. And it was a ton of information that I really do think the teams did an excellent job of trying to get information out to us. Whether or not we had time to review that and really sit with it is one thing, but I just really wanted to comment on that because I'm anticipating questions 2 and 3 about the limited timeline, and I'm very impressed that this plan was submitted on time. I was very skeptical of that going into it. So I just wanted to thank everyone for that and say that out front in anticipating some of those comments about kind of the rush timeline and you know, we do have time now to refine it, to gather data, to really get voices that we wanted that might not have been sitting on the G-Spec this year, to go out and get more stakeholders into the process. That the critical thing is done. Now we can refine it. So I just wanted to.
And thank you so much, Brenna, for that comment. And, you know, that's something that is my objective and our objective. You know, it was unfortunate that we did have such a quick timeline. Like you said, we had 9 months. We formed the G-Spec. We got everything ready to go. We built a model, et cetera, reviewed a document, built an entire 600 plus page GSP. And now is the fun part. So we have the opportunity, and that's what I want to remind people. And that's why we have these reports that we have to do, that we have these updates that we have to do, that we have the opportunity. You know, I told everyone in the beginning, once the GSP is done, the work needs to get done. We still have a lot to do, and that's where we're going to be able to do that together, is looking at the data gaps that we have. What are we missing? Who do we need to bring to the table? I know that's my biggest priority for the G-Spec, is getting those seats filled, especially the disadvantaged community seats. So I don't want to jump to question number 2, but are there any other successes that you all want to highlight besides hearing my voice so many times throughout the month? Go ahead, Sarah.
I think having the conversations about groundwater use and starting to pulling together all of these documents is I think a great success. You know, it's the start of building a program that's going to be much more responsive and stronger. You know, I work for government. When you build in a program, you got to have good information, but you got to start somewhere. So I do appreciate the efforts that went into pulling together the information that is out there, and it's at least we're in a better place than we were prior to that. So that's a success.
Yeah. Yay. I agree, Sarah, definitely. Like I said, we have to start somewhere. It's not perfect. We acknowledge it wasn't perfect, but I'm really excited to see the path that we continue forward. Again, not only for our Big Valley Basin, but just for our greater Lake County community as well. All right. Oh, yay. Okay. Go ahead, Peter. Oh, you're on mute again.
I'd like to give a shout out to our consultants. Extremely knowledgeable people, and open to hearing suggestions and gathering information. I mean, I was just impressed how they got a grip on Big Valley and tributaries and the complexity of these things. That was very, very impressive, and I appreciated their openness to hearing from everyone.
I will relay that message to them, Peter. They will be very happy to hear that. Very, very happy.
Thank you, Peter. Awesome. All right.
Marina, I have one thing, if nobody else has it, kind of piggybacks on what Sarah said. I just want to acknowledge, for me, one of the most exciting things to see happen is some of the bridges that are being built between different parts of the county in order to bring things to bear that are going to be more helpful for this program overall, more regional planning kind of focus and looking at those type of things. And that's really exciting to see happen.
Yay. Okay. Now we all feel good. Let's go ahead. What were some of our challenges? So I know we outlined some, but this is really an opportunity for you all to outline some of our challenges. And what I want us to keep in mind, it's important for us to outline what our challenges are that we faced, right? But what I'm looking for is, how can we overcome those challenges? How can we prevent those from happening now for Gspac 2.0, right? For the actual implementation, the boots on the ground. It's important to acknowledge our challenges that we faced, the hurdles that we overcame, but how can we prevent that in the future? And what do we want to avoid going into this, round 2 per se? So any other challenges that anyone wants to address?
I'll just jump in here real quick. I think one of the challenges that we're facing now is, how are we going to fund it? We've got a little over a year to figure out how we're going to come up with $400,000 a year to maintain and do the yearly updates on the plan. That to me is a little concerning, but.
Thank you, Scott. We're in the same boat. Val, you were going to say something?
As we go forward, are we still under the Brown Act? I felt like it was a challenge not being able to talk to other people when I had, wanted a direct question to somebody else that was on the committee.
Do you want me to jump in here, Marina?
Yeah, go ahead.
So as far as the G-Spec, once it is appointed again as like adopted as via resolution as a board, there will be Brown Act requirements that are put in place between different board members meeting outside, or different G-Spec members meeting outside of the context of a G-Spec meeting. But there was never a time that anyone was prohibited from talking to the representative public that they held a seat to represent. And so, we can definitely consult in a more close fashion if it makes you feel comfortable, but there is no prohibition between a G-Spec member going out and talking to members of the public and talking to the groups they serve, or talking to other groups, civic groups, those type of things, to collect information and to gather and to encourage them to be part of the process. Where we run into issues is if there were any G-Spec members who were meeting collectively outside of the G-Spec meeting, or any type of work being done to try to align people's guidance of what they were going to. We don't have a voting structure, but to align things. So it's more of the G-Spec members meeting outside than it is of groups meeting outside. But certainly there's no prohibition between working as close as you want with the people that you represent.
And I think that's really going to take shape this 2.0 phase, as we're going to get into here later in the discussion, is we're going to be, leaning on your expertise to represent and communicate and, inform the user groups that you are representing on this G-Spec. So you're going to have discussion outside of our G-Spec meetings. We're going to meet on a quarterly basis, but like Christy said, is, we follow the Brown Act compliance. And what we can do is we can also give another refresher. We can revisit that. We can look at that and see how we can best, of course, follow Brown Act compliance since we're supposed to, but also making sure that folks are aware of what you should and should not do to make sure that we maintain compliance with that.
Marina, really quickly, I'm going to make a note of that for our May meeting of maybe having a little bit of a refresher for Brown Act as we move towards implementation of having County Council join us.
Yes. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment, Christy, because the Brown Act does not preclude two members of the committee from talking to each other. It's much more refined than just simply you can't talk to each other. That's not a correct interpretation of the Brown Act. So if we need to review, that might be a good thing to do.
Sure. Yeah, there's some language that feeds into that about it can't seek any type of alignment or agreement. There's a whole thing that happens with emails and even, like chains or they're called serial meetings, those type of things. So, and I also realized that some of the people who are on G-Spec now were not on it when we had the initial May 11th meeting where County Council came. So we'll definitely make that happen for May.
I should also comment, complicating it also somewhat, is several of us work on other committees, other projects, but related to somewhat to the same subject matter. For example, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Strategic Plan for the Clear Lake Hitch, and those are, we're on those are not Brown Act committees. Those are committees in which we're discussing these issues and coming up with proposals. So it's again, that's all I think I have to say.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. Any other challenges that we all faced during this process? Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi. Well, I think the challenges were part of the reason why we rejected the plan as it was drafted in its final form. And that one of those challenges being that it really was not a diverse group of people on this committee, partially because of design and partially because of that, some key seats weren't, the disadvantaged community seat was not filled. And I really think that this could have gone a different way in terms of some of the recommendations, some of the projects, and just kind of the overall feeling of, is it okay for shallow wells to go dry, in this scenario, that it would have been, had it been a more diverse group of users, then there might have been different conclusions. And because the plan for, the stakeholder groups includes a disadvantaged community seat, and also, having these various perspectives about the GSP and about groundwater management in general. I really feel like it was a disservice to all of the efforts that happened. And I'm not, like laying blame on the county or Stantec or whoever for not reaching out and getting the right people necessarily. It's more that, because of the rushed, nature of this thing, and the lack of the public really being involved in groundwater issues. And, it was a heavy lift. And I understand that, I was doing it as part of my job, so I got paid for my time. But, a lot of people did not have that benefit. And so it was a heavy lift. So in any case, the challenge of having a diverse group of voices of the groundwater users of the Big Valley area, which would allow for a true evaluation and conversation that would be take into account all of the uses. I think just did not happen because of the makeup of the group, which happened because of timing mostly. And so I think that is the challenge that I would like to see overcome as we move forward, because the public and, domestic well users who are, living in the area and, potentially concerned about their shallow wells going dry, those discussions really weren't happening. And same with the disadvantaged community seat. Like, I don't know what they would have brought to the conversation, but it could have been something that would really kind of stop certain things in its tracks. I don't know, but we missed out on that. So, the incompleteness was there. And that is definitely a huge challenge. One of the huge challenges that we saw that also led to our rejection of the plan.
And thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And, we've had discussions, and I'm right there with you. My biggest priority for our G-Spec is to fill that seat with an appropriate representative, especially for the domestic well owners. We're going to be leaning on them a lot during this implementation aspect. We need to coordinate with them. We need to have a voice for them, and we want them involved. So, leaning on you all to help us, when I say you all, I mean the G-Spec members. And as you said, Sarah, it's unfortunate. It's a heavy load. This is a heavy lift that we have, and not everyone is, it's a big time commitment. We're asking a lot of you, and we understand that, we acknowledge that, but it's important for us to reach as many people as possible to make sure that we have everyone at the table, right? And, doing more implementation and catering to each beneficial use and user to make sure that we're catering to them, because not every user group is the same, right? Not every resource is going to help the same user group. So we have so many resources that we're able to utilize, but we're leaning on the expertise and putting it in, the proper hands, which is you all, to make sure we get those resources out there and develop resources that cater to each user. So my priority, I want to fill this, disadvantaged seat ASAP. I have a few folks that I think could fill this role, but again, always looking for ideas, etc. I know we've reached out to a few people in the past, and there was no interest for those folks that we reached out in the past, but maybe, G-Spec 2.0, they'd be interested. So still engaging those conversations and doing everything that we can to get everyone at the table and be an advocate for everyone at the table. David?
Yes, I just wanted to say that, first of all, I completely support the idea of having as many relevant and stakeholder type voices at the table as possible. That's the American way. And I think the strength of this plan would be enhanced by those other voices attending. But I also resent the fact, or my interpretation of what Sarah just said, that the conclusions would have somehow been different if we'd had other people at the table. I mean, the data that we had available to us, analyzed by Ludorf and Scalmanini and the committee members as a whole, was very conclusively, I think, that this is a very sustainable basin. And to suggest that it isn't because we didn't have other voices on the committee is wrong. And I just want to make that point.
Thank you, David. All right. Any other challenges that we want to outline? And feel free, if you guys are thinking about this later down the road, this is not a, okay, we're collecting all the challenges and moving on. This is a working process. So if you think of something down the road, feel free, as lead of the G-Spec, please let me know, because we're going to get to the point here where we're going to be doing some rechartering of our G-Spec charter. And, I'm going to collect some input from you all and then do some drafting of that and then bring it back to you all during our next discussion. So if there's anything else that you want to share, please feel free to reach out to me as lead of the G-Spec. I can take those comments or questions or concerns. And then of course we'll share that, with the G-Spec during our next meeting as well. All right, going once, going twice, challenges. Okay, moving on. So how was the process? How did you all feel that this process went? How were our monthly meetings? Did you like that format? Did you like the structure? Any thoughts on that? You want to meet every day? I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Val.
Once again, it just felt rushed to me. And I felt like sometimes the information was, I was asked to make decision and stuff was pushed, given to us at the meeting that we had to make decisions on immediately. And that felt too rushed for me. And back to what Sarah was saying, we don't really know if it would have changed, just to be the bridge between those two ideas of whether a disadvantaged community's opinion would change the outcome. We just don't know. So it is really important to reach out to them, someone, and have them on this committee.
Thank you, Val. Any other comments or questions on the process? Is there something that you would like to see different? Do you have other ideas? Again, we're planning on meeting quarterly, so not monthly. Again, it was a heavy load, but we have some time to really make sure that we get things done and down and that we get all the data. We plan our projects, so we'll have a little bit of time to breathe. We'll have a little bit more breathing room. But again, open to any other ideas. So before I get finger happy here, any other comments or questions on this, the discussion of our previous G-Spec process, coordination efforts, successes, challenges? None? All right. I'm always open to hear ideas. I'm here and I'm a resource that's available to you all. So please feel free to let me know. Again, this is the time that we're making any sort of necessary changes that you guys deem appropriate to get what we need to get out of this process. So let's go ahead and move on over to agenda item 6, the G-Spec rechartering process for GSP implementation. So I want to spend some time here on this slide. You guys have seen this slide before, but here in this little section here, this is what we're planning on doing today, right? Of getting an understanding of how we're going to be rechartering this document. And then of course, by our next G-Spec meeting, which will be in May 2022, this is what you can all anticipate that we'll be covering there. So I'm just going to very quickly go through this list, and then we'll, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the G-Spec document. I will also include it in the chat so you all can follow along by yourselves. We're going to walk through that. And again, what my plan is I'm going to get some input and feedback from you all depending on today's discussion. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraft the charter that we deem appropriate. And then come May 2022, that's when I'm going to bring that revised draft of the G-Spec charter to the G-Spec, see how that looks, if there's anything else that we need to add, take out, etc. And that's going to be our new rechartered G-Spec for the implementation part of our GSP. So real quick, what we're going to go over today Again, so we evaluated previous charter and process to identify effectiveness. That's what we did on the previous slide. So outlining some of our successes, challenges, and the process that we had. We're going to revisit the G-Spec purpose and goals. So right now we have that actually in our G-Spec charter. What I would like to see is what I really want to see is having a mission or a value statement, mission statement or values for our actual G-Spec, and then not necessarily have that in the charter document. So what the long-term plan is to have our GSP have its own logo, or our G-Spec have its own logo, have our own website landing page that we are all that we all have access to, and then, or the county would actually maintain. And then that way it's its own landing page separate from county water resources per se, to have us have more ownership of it. And then also just having the mission statement or the goals right at the very front, and then possibly taking that out of the actual charter document. We're going to revise our key tasks and deliverables. Again, this is going to look a little bit different just because our previous charter was focused on the planning. Now we're moving towards the implementation. Going to review and discuss the organizational structure and membership, consider beneficial user and user categories. Again, this is outlined by DWR, and then Water Code 10723, I believe. And then establish the process for filling open seats. That is my biggest priority, is to get those seats filled ASAP. And then discuss decision-making process and determining methods for providing guidance. Now, during our next G-Spec meeting, we're gonna, again, review that draft new G-Spec charter document, board of directors approval of new charter. So again, once that charter is all good on our end, we will bring that to the board of supervisors, and I will be leaning on you all if anyone wants to participate in that discussion, bringing that to the board for review and approval, and then G-Spec established for GSP implementation. So I'm gonna just stop sharing my screen for 1 second, and I'm going to pull up the charter document, and then I will also put it in the chat here. Again, that is available on the Water Resources website, but let's me. All right, so the charter is in the chat for everyone to see. Let's see. All right, so now I'm going to go back and share my screen. Do I have any questions right now before I get started? No? All right, this is going to be fun. Here we go. Okay, so right now what I would like us to do is just go ahead and look at the purpose and goals. So again, the introduction of our G-Spec. So Sigma provides a framework for sustainable management of groundwater supplies by local authorities. It also requires the formation of a GSA. As a refresher, our GSA currently sits as the board of directors of the Watershed Protection District. In August of 2019, in compliance with Sigma, the Lake County Board of Supervisors formed the Big Valley GSA. The Big Valley GSA will assist conditions in the Big Valley groundwater basin and create and adopt a locally developed groundwater sustainability plan. The board of directors of the Big Valley GSA is the standing Lake County Board of Supervisors. So again, we have completed that, we've accomplished that. So our introduction is going to focus on the actual implementation. So not just adopting and developing a GSP, but implementing the approved GSP. So let's look at our purpose and goals. So the Big Valley GSP Advisory Committee has been formed to advise the Lake County Board of Supervisors on the development of the Big Valley GSP. The intent of the G-Spec is to provide community stakeholder perspectives and participation in local Sigma implementation. Are there any comments or questions or recommended edits to that section? And I don't want to take this time to wordsmith it. I'm not looking for any formal sentences. I'm going to develop that, but any sort of comments or edits or anything that you would like to see in this document, now is the time to share with me as I'm going through, and we'll be playing wordsmith here soon to redraft this GSP.
The only thing, Marina, that on purpose and goals, I'd like to clarify, sometimes there's a little confusion between the Board of Supervisors and the Board of Directors of the GSA. So just making that clarification in there, we should capture that.
Perfect. Thank you, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. seeing none, let's just go ahead and go down to our, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Marina, I just thought that, this charter, so the language in there says on the development of the GSP, the GSP is now developed.
Yes.
So I would alter that language as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Sarah. So what my plan is, any term that is talking about the development of the GSP, I'm just going to go ahead and change it to the implementation of the GSP, because that's the phase that we're at. So that's a good comment, Sarah, and I'm glad you made that public. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the mission, key tasks, and bless you, David, and deliverables. So the G-Spec will review and provide recommendations to the Big Valley GSA board. The group is charged with undertaking activities, including holding regular monthly meetings to discuss progress on GSP development. So again, it is our anticipation, per the recommendation of the G-Spec from previous discussions, we're going to move those over to quarterly. Is there any other comments on that? So changing that from monthly to quarterly meetings. No? All right. So receiving background information and technical content updates, conducting GSP content review, providing community education and outreach as outlined in communications and engagement plan, keeping a decision log of key issues, discussion items, and decision-making outcomes, and then providing guidance to Big Valley GSA Board and Lake County Watershed Protection District on groundwater-related issues, activities, and community engagement. So this is where, to me, I'm going to be breaking down a lot of this and updating it because we've done that, right? So, conducting GSP content review. Of course, as we do our annual plan and we do our updates, the G-Spec we will still be leaning on the G-Spec to review any of those documents, still engaging with you all in terms of data, data collection, analysis, et cetera, hopefully doing some collaboration. Sarah, I know you and your team are doing some awesome work and focusing more on a co-management aspect. So as we do these boots on the grounds, getting some of these projects underway, finding more funding opportunities to actually do, more data collection and data analysis. And not just the planning, so actually doing the work. So this is where I'm going to be updating a lot of this, again, to get away from the GSP planning and preparation, but moving to the implementation. So are there any things that you guys would like to see in here? Any ideas that you have, something that you really want us to include in the updated charter document? Go ahead, Sarah.
I think that component about receiving information and technical content updates could be further fleshed out, such as, there was obviously, it was noted during the development of the GSP that there were gaps of data, and between projects that the county gets funded that will help provide some of that data, and as you mentioned, other entities collecting data that can be used in any sort of further determinations of groundwater sustainability management. I just would like that further fleshed out, like what does that look like, and to the extent that it needs to be in the charter, but I would like it fleshed out, like are there going to be you're obviously not going to have consultants, like there's that 5-year plan, the annual updates, and just how is that going to look in terms of providing information and really reviewing it, rather than, well, it's just going to sit here until some later date.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. That's important. Peter, go ahead.
I would suggest that there be some language in there somewhere that says one of the functions of this organization is to try to resolve differences in interpretation of data. Anyhow, do that, and I don't know if you call it mediation, but somehow we're in real my concern is that data may be incorrectly interpreted, or statements made that in a perspective that isn't supported by facts. So anyhow, that somehow that needs to be a function of this, rather than people just taking making statements and then going off and promoting those as being somehow facts. I don't know. I'm not saying it very well, but just that idea of trying to come together and say, okay, we agree on these things. For example, there's a lot of discussion about dry domestic wells. Well, they don't exist, frankly, folks. They don't exist. And it's because those wells have been used for years and years and years, and people have got them. They drilled them so that they could have water. But somehow to imply that there are a lot of dry wells out there, and then the next question is, well, what's the solution? And anyway, try to resolve those kinds of things as a function of this, should this. Anyway, that's all.
And thank you for that comment, Peter. I think I think what you're getting at is, making sure that we're utilizing the best available data that we have, and, sharing those resources. And that's what the objective is, right? We understand the data gaps, but utilizing the best available data for the planning and the implementation.
It's more than that. It's trying to see if we can get a consensus about relying on that data, a consensus of what indeed the true facts are. I'm just domestic wells, once again, as example. I had a great conversation with a man I've known he's lived there forever, at the intersection of Soda Bay Road and Manning Creek. He said his well did, in fact, in 1976. It's a 20-foot deep well. And he served him every single year for decades. The family goes back 100 years. The only year in which they had a dry well was in 1976. Not this past year, any other year. So anyway, it's just indicative of the kinds of issues that we really need to be accurate about and work to make sure that can speak with a voice that is authoritative and correct.
Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the major actions as part of the GSP is the well inventory and analysis. And that's going to kind of get at not all of those, but better understanding the wells creation, their status, how they're doing, the screen interval, how they're being maintained. So all the wells that we monitor, we want to do an updated inventory and analysis on them to kind of, like we said, fill in those data gaps, but also kind of see what their condition and status is. So that'll give us a good idea of some of the older historical wells that we've always been monitoring over the years, how they're being maintained. And so hopefully that'll get at some of those questions and issues that we've been running into.
Thank you, Will. All right, so anything else that you all would like to see in the mission, key tasks and deliverables? All right, and then so that would set us up for outcomes. So again, this whole G-Spec charter was charted around the fact that we were planning and developing a GSP. So right now what we have currently for the outcomes is products and recommendations of the group will be transmitted to the Lake County Board of Supervisors as a standing board of directors for the Big Valley GSA. G-Spec written recommendations will be provided in periodic reports and updates. The recommendations will identify the range of group perspectives and areas of agreement and disagreement on GSP related matters. Recommendations will be given the highest level of consideration in the development of the Big Valley GSA GSP, due for submission to DWR on January 31st, 2022. So again, I still see our G-Spec going to the board, providing updates, outlining what we have outlined as we did in the past. Same with recommendations. So not just recommendations on what we are planning on doing, including in our GSP. So for example, recommending the chapter, hydrologic model, et cetera, but recommending the work that we will be doing, recommending the data that we will be utilizing. So still planning on going before the board, giving proper and timely updates on all things Big Valley GSP implementation, but just some minor changes there. Sarah, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. My question was the recommendation sentence. So how How did the process go this year in terms of the recommendations reflecting or identifying the range of group perspectives and areas of agreement and disagreement? How did you do that this year?
Yeah, so
What did that look like?
yeah, that's a great question, Sarah. So the board, the Big Valley GSA, they received all meeting information. So every meeting that we had, that the Gspac had, they had those meeting summaries available as well. And then when it came to the actual adoption process, and what we did is we utilized the levels of agreement. So we will get down to that here later on in today's discussion. And from, the insight that I have received from other Gspac members and then also the GSA, that was a relatively easy process for them to see. So as we were going through the chapters, and of course we're not a voting committee, we just had our levels of agreement that we stated, that allowed every Gspac member to share why they put that levels of agreement that they did. So it gave them the opportunity to elaborate on what they did. So all the GSA members were able to see who said what, thanks to the very thorough meeting summaries that we had. And then the overview of, this is what the overall recommendation from the Gspac, but then also here's each individual Gspac member's levels of agreement for each item. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so they saw the meeting summaries and the levels of agreement for each of the decisions basically throughout.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they of course had, when we sent that to them as well, we sent them the meeting recordings as well, so available on our website, but we pointed them to where the meeting recordings were. So if there's something that they wanted to see more of the dialogue and actually see the interactions, they were able to see that in, recorded time per se. And what I like about the levels of agreement, we'll get to this. It gives you the overarching. Here's the number levels of agreement. It's consistent throughout the entire GSP development process. Here's why, this member, voted on, presented this levels of agreement, and then, here's, the overarching consensus of the group.
And the numbers and the topics. So, because I'm just, identify the range of group perspectives. It's like, I maybe they had time to watch all the recordings. I don't know. That's a lot of, it was a lot of meetings. But as long as they're seeing the different perspectives through the levels of agreement on the topics, I just want to make sure that they're seeing perspectives, the range of perspectives.
Yeah, and that's why, when we were collecting those levels of agreement, we had folks put those into the chat box, right? So we had those written documentations of it. And then we also went and did a roll call of every Gspac member, and we were able to hear from every Gspac member of why they put that level of what they did. So then those notes were recorded in the meeting summaries as well. And it's clearly outlined in each Gspac meeting summary that we had of, here was the voting, here was the roll call, here's what everyone said. So I know from what I heard, a lot of them went to, every time there was a levels of agreement discussion, they went to those and they were able to see not just the number that was provided, but also why that number was provided. Because like you said, everyone has different background, opinion. That's why we do the levels of agreement. Since we are a non-voting, entity, it's still important. We're a consensus based. We are the expertise, right? Providing that expertise to the Big Valley GSA, who is the adopting in the voting board.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, so anything else in terms of outcomes? Okie dokie. So now I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I'm gonna go back to the our presentation, because now what I want us to focus on is the actual who we have on the committee, who are we missing, and who we need to bring to be. So just bear with me for 1 second. I am pulling up the water code as well. Oh, thank you, Craig, for joining us. I will be following up with you soon. All right, so again, so here is how our G-Spec was developed and created. Here were the seats that we had. So review beneficial users and uses of Big Valley Basin groundwater. So this G-Spec was developed based off of what Sigma provides us. Again, Sigma provides us the framework of who needs to be at the table and how. So looking at the beneficial uses and users, right now I would like to highlight the open seats that we have. So again, we have been missing this entire time, a disadvantaged community seat. Again, that's my priority of filling that seat. So looking to see if there's any sort of recommendations, folks that may be interested in fulfilling that seat. And then we are missing also a domestic well owner. Again, this seat is going to be crucial. So formerly we had Sky Hoyt, who decided not to come back, unfortunately, but now we need a domestic well owner. Again, we're going to be leaning heavily on this seat to get engaged and open up some dialogue with the domestic well owners, especially as we're talking about implementation. And then our private users, previously it was the school district. So we'd had Kyle Reams, who was awesome, but just with the heavy workload, as we can all anticipate or imagine, Kyle decided not to come back. So those are the 3 seats that we are looking to fill. And then also, I just want to take this opportunity to hear from you all if there's any other seats that we want to bring to the table. Just to disclose where the direction I am thinking of, I don't want too many people at the table, right? Because that can make things very difficult, but I do want to make sure that we have everyone we need to be. So one way that we can do that is having also advisory roles for the advisory committee. So we could put in the recharter document, having, for example, having someone present. I'm just going to use Laura because she's on the call. So I would really like to have more engagement with planning, and luckily Laura is interested as well. So having some sort of advisory seat or someone from planning or cannabis or environmental health present in every discussion. So we could also include that in the rechartering, or if you guys would rather have that as a seat. So I see Peter with your hand raised. Go ahead, Peter.
A question, and maybe you can help clarify that, and that's talking about disadvantaged community. It's not clear to me what that means. I heard a comment, I believe at our last meeting, saying by economic criteria, anyone in the town of Kelseyville, the entire community constitutes a disadvantaged community by state kind of economic standards. So who do we mean? What do we mean by disadvantaged community? What's a person who fits that profile?
Yeah, and that's a good question, Peter. So just to give some background for our grant application with this entire Prop 68 SGM grant that we applied and were awarded for our development, the entire town of Kelseyville, so DWR utilizes a tool, their disadvantaged community tool, and the entire town of Kelseyville and the surrounding area is identified as a disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged community. So Christy, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to elaborate. We did have some folks participate in previous discussions. I know we had some nonprofits join. Ideally, I would like to see someone who lives and resides in our Big Valley Basin, just to be an advocate for the community. Those folks that we did reach out to previously who were able to provide some input and provide us some awesome resources to utilize, there was not interest on their behalf to fill this role, but none of the folks that we reached out or who had participated were within the community. So they were larger nonprofits that were able to provide some input regarding the disadvantaged community seat.
So let's keep going. A disadvantaged community, I mean, my impression is we're talking about people who are low income people, but that sounds like that's not the case. It's something that I really need some help on this thing, Christy, because I've been presuming, we don't, anyway, that if we were looking for a particular small subset, but it doesn't sound to me like that is. What is this disadvantaged community if all of Kelseyville fits that criteria?
And, if you go into, I think the GSP had some language specific to it, specific to Big Valley and to the areas. So looking at the disadvantaged communities, it is strictly put down by a household median income. And so there are different screening tools that the state uses to be able to determine that. But the ones that we used, I believe, were in the DWR tools, the ones that we used in the GSP for it. I'm actually going to call on a resource that we have here on the call for us today. Marisa, do you have anything else to add to that? Marisa does a lot of work in this space. So, just anything else that you could enlighten us with beyond just like the median household income kind of bracket for disadvantaged.
Yeah, and I don't want to overstep in terms of, I would just share, Peter, your confusion is shared by many at the state. And part of the reason for that is a lack of consistency between grant programs and legislative, what's the term I'm looking for? It escapes me right now, but essentially the Department of Water Resources definition is different than, say, Cal EPA. There are different features of communities that are pointed out, and there are a variety of different tools that would highlight that. So, for example, the EPA uses a tool called Cal EnviroScreen, which takes into account not only economic considerations, but it also cross-checks for vulnerability to environmental health hazards. So there's a variety of different ways you could interpret disadvantaged community to better suit your local context. I myself haven't had a chance to review what that section looks like in the GSP for Big Valley. So I couldn't really speak to your context specifically, but more broadly, I think there are a lot of conversations in this space about better communicating who would be considered a disadvantaged community. And then, would they self-describe themselves in that way, or is that a term that the state finds advantageous to use for the purpose of grant programs? So I do want to add, yes, I want to acknowledge Sarah's comment. Disadvantage is also interpreted as underrepresented community. When I worked at the Department of Water Resources, our group was specifically using the terms underrepresented as well to consider the historical context of representation in their governing bodies on a local level. So there's a lot that goes into it, Peter. I understand why it's overwhelming. I think, yeah, I do want to just affirm that. Thanks, Christy. I don't want to take up all the space here. There's a lot.
Marisa has way more details. She works on a lot, and she works on behalf of several state entities and has done a lot of work in communities on this. So one of the reasons why we picked her specifically to work on this project is she could bring that to bear for us as well. So,
well, just to follow up, I mean, based on stories, I visualize what this is really targeted for is someplace like the San Joaquin Valley, where you have these low-income communities whose water supplies are hugely impacted by the groundwater pumping that goes on for agriculture primarily, but others. I mean, that strikes me, and typically Hispanic, and that's an underrepresented, disadvantaged community, and based on political influence and all of that.
Yeah.
That strikes me as a definition or a factual situation that makes sense. I'm having difficulty here understanding what we're talking about, and particularly when it comes to recruitment, because you've all asked us to help find people of disadvantaged community, and that's, that doesn't fit our profile. And so I'm struggling with that. And we've had these enormous representations that the outcome would have been different if we'd somehow had people representing a community that's identifiable as a disadvantage. So give us some help, because I don't want that charge to be made again. If it's not, if there isn't something that's real. So,
well, and I think that we might need to separate this into two bits of looking at what the disadvantaged community was in relation to the funding that was procured to develop the GSP, and the classic sense of that median household income and a percentage of median household income. So I think you can look at it that way, but I think in broader terms for the sake of this entity and this body, rather than having to parse all the exact differences of that, because we'd be here for probably as much time as we spent doing the GSP development, discovering those things, is to look at it in terms of what type of audiences and population and folks have we not gotten at the table who would be impacted by things that would happen with groundwater. And so we talk in terms of people that have domestic wells. We've even talked a little bit about people who live on land that they don't own that have a domestic well that somebody else owns but provides their water. So I think that what we should probably do is take a very broad context for it in terms of the seat. We want to be really careful. I think it's very easy to slip into the, oh, well, that's a Spanish speaking population, or, you know, that's a tribal. I'm sure Sarah's heard that before too. When you're talking, they're not the state, they're not the same thing. To be disadvantaged doesn't mean being any one thing in terms of looking for vulnerable populations, underrepresented populations. There's a lot of different language that's used for it. I think that tackling that in very broad terms for this group into that means people who would have loss of water, you know, drinking water, human right to water, and just looking at some of those other things, you know, could it be an economic thing strictly? Sure, and it was for the grant process. But now let's kind of open that up to look at who are those populations. And I'll give you this charge too, not just that are impacted by their water, but impacted in their understanding of what groundwater is and how and why it's important to them. You know, then we fold in some of the things about some of the non-English language resources that we can bring to bear and some of the other things that we have too. But I would take, you know, Peter, rather than really trying to drill down on exactly what that is, almost like qualifications for a resume of someone we're looking for, is kind of leave that open in a broad context. But that's the difference between disadvantaged as it is defined in a lot of grant giving and disadvantaged as it is in a community, in the actual application of the community. Sarah and Laura, you've been most patient with your hand. So we'll go Sarah and Laura.
I don't think that helps me very much. But
well,
anyway,
and you know, Peter,
appreciate
maybe
the
a
effort.
little bit more discussion here might. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and hear some from others, and that the ensuing discussion might help. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, just a little bit of piggyback on what you were just saying about disadvantaged communities and the loss of water. And I think that we should remember to broaden that loss of water to not just a groundwater well going dry, but if groundwater, you know, in general, if groundwater is not managed well, if groundwater use is not managed well, then that could impact surface water flows. And surface water flows impact a lot of people, not just, you know, landowners who whose wells are going dry, or a renter who's having domestic well problems or something. But it's the overall, you know, there's a lot more to the water in an area, and the, you know, the groundwater dependent ecosystems, the, you know, the flora and fauna of the area. You know, we've got parks in the Big Valley Basin that you know, I'm not trying to make a grand scheme here, but, you know, there's just that that broader sense of a disadvantaged community that is using resources that are impacted if groundwater isn't managed well. So, and then the other point I wanted to make is so just in terms of the makeup and the beneficial user category, I know this was assuming it was set by the board of directors of the GSA, being the board of supervisors, but with 3 agricultural users seats as beneficial user categories, that's basically 27% of the seats on that we have so far. And I'm wondering, in terms of the amount of wells and the just, you know, the amount of population and all that, whether that, you know, 3 agricultural users is over representing that group. And, you know, do you have numbers based on wells and population that says that agricultural users should have 27% of the seats here?
using that criteria and those numbers, you might argue that they should have more.
So I'm asking the county if they have numbers, if that show that it should be that.
So I don't have, Sarah, this is Marina. I don't have any numbers off the top of my head. So how this actual G-Spec was developed again was going off of the water code. So who is represented, and we understand, we acknowledge that Big Valley is predominantly ag, right? So hence the reason why we had 3 different ag seats. But here's the opportunity for us to look at, you know, how is this makeup? Are we missing more people? Do we need to add more seats? Is there more representation, you know, that we need to have? And that's what I want, you know, this dialogue to do. So, you know, for example, if you feel that we need to have, you know, additional seat for a different beneficial user, again, Sigma provides us the framework per this water code. Here's how you will make up the advisory committee, right? But how that looks is based off of the specifics of each different groundwater basin. Since we're predominantly ag, that's how we came up with, you know, the 3 ag seats. But if we feel like we're missing a seat, that's what I want us to discuss. You know, who do we need to add? Do we need to add an additional, you know, seat for domestic well? Do we need to add an additional urban user? Do we need to add another tribe, you know, a disadvantaged community seat? What does that look like for us? So looking for those specific recommendations, because now is the opportunity for us to do that and restructure this.
Marina, why don't we fold in? I know Laura, Brenna, William, David will go in that order. So Laura, thanks for your patience.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Yes, I was really trying to get together yesterday with Marina to discuss this disadvantaged community open seat. I don't know what's all involved. I wanted to find out about it, but taking on the natural resources and the planning department, I'm kind of swamped right now. But the reason why I was interested in this seat is I grew up in Kelseyville in a disadvantaged community. So I think I might know a little bit about it. I live in Lucerne now, which is another disadvantaged community. So I feel like I would have a lot to offer, but I don't know if I should make that commitment because of the amount of work that I have right now. So I want to sit down and kind of go over that with Marina and see if that, what would be involved in this.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Brenna?
Thanks, everyone. So it's difficult because I think given that, you know, we have kind of a specific idea in our head of what that disadvantaged community seat looks like. In all reality, you know, the difference between someone sitting as a disadvantaged community seat and as a domestic well user could be very similar unless, you know, we're kind of beating around the bush as the type of person that we want in that disadvantaged community seat, you know, and I'm hearing through kind of the undertones, but in terms of like strategies to go out and procure that person or that person that can represent the specific disadvantaged community aspects of the basin, I think having like a clear set of kind of boundaries that we're working within will be helpful. The other point that I want to make that, you know, we have these stakeholders sitting on this committee that are representing various user groups, right? I'm sitting on the committee in my position as executive director of the Lake County Farm Bureau representing agricultural users. But I also live in the groundwater basin. I get my water from a domestic well. And so I know that that is very, that's going to be a similar story to a lot of people that sit on this committee. We're not necessarily all representing one use or one beneficial use. So when characterizations are made of, well, the committee is made up of 27% ag users, that could be correct on the face of it. But, you know, I'm a resident of the Big Valley Groundwater Basin, and I'm in that sitting here in that capacity too. So when we think about who's sitting in these seats, who they're representing, you know, some people might be sitting in kind of multiple capacities in that seat and thinking about this issue from multiple perspectives. And so I do think that that is important to note as we move forward and try to fill some of these seats and kind of get a diverse swath of the Big Valley Groundwater Basin stakeholders represented.
And that's a really good point, Brenna. I appreciate that because, you know, we all wear many hats, right, in the county, and we all engage and work with each other from a variety of different perspectives. And I think that's what's so important. And, you know, that's the whole purpose of Sigma is they provide us this framework, but we cater it to our specific community. Our community, we all just happen to wear many hats and have different expertise and backgrounds. So, you know, and that's what I'm trying to utilize is, okay, what does that disadvantaged community seat look for us? What does that domestic well owner seat look for us? That's what we have the ability to do is, you know, we have the ability to structure it to cater to our, you know, our GS, you know, our Gspac.
Okay, we'll go William and David. William?
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on some of maybe the issues in finding that disadvantaged community seat previously. And, you know, time is a really valuable resource, and especially if you are an underrepresented or disadvantaged community member, 3 hours every month is a lot of income lost for people. And so I especially noticed during the GSP process that it is hard to fit a seat when you're a disadvantaged community member thinking about potentially sitting on this advisory committee, and you would be potentially foregoing a decent amount of income to represent your community. So it can be a double-edged sword, and definitely something that with the quick timeline that we previously had and with the amount of meetings and commitment previously that we had, that it kind of makes sense that it was hard to fill that seat. And so hopefully with the lesser meetings and lesser time commitment, we can find that seat. But I would like to work as a community and us at the county to make it as easy as possible to fill that seat, and to make it as easy as possible for that disadvantaged or underrepresented community member to get the resources they need and not to be foregoing that valuable resource that is time, so that we can have that seat filled. But I would like to acknowledge that it's a huge time investment to be on this advisory committee. And like Sarah said, some of us get paid for that time. Many of us don't get paid for that time. And so I think that's just an important consideration when we think of the commitments that this advisory committee puts forward. So thanks.
Thanks, William. David, did you have something to add?
Yes, I, as an ag user on this committee, I view part of the constituency that I represent to be the farm workers that work in this valley. And many of them work for me, but many of them work for other people too. And, you know, me personally, I live in the valley or the basin, and my domestic well comes from not an ag well, but a domestic well that I don't even own. And so I'm as concerned as anybody else about the domestic, the performance of these domestic wells. And, but I'm also concerned about the people that work for me and others in the industry, and, you know, the wherewithal of their whatever their wherewithal is to secure domestic water for wherever it is they're living. And so to Brenna's point about, you know, we have different, we all have different areas of emphasis in our lives, but we also span several of these beneficial user categories. And I think I don't take any of that lightly. So I think it's, I think we have some of these bases covered, perhaps not to the satisfaction of others, but I think they're not being ignored. I can say that.
You know, and I think one of the perils of this is that, you know, trying to figure all this out in the course of a 2.5-hour meeting of all the things for the charter, I think it's pretty clear that everybody is very resolute on having that seat, that disadvantaged user seat. What might be helpful is for us to provide some bullet points about kind of the nature of the type of person that we're looking for that. That might be helpful. What I want to make sure that we clear off here is that we're getting at any other beneficial user categories that we may not be thinking of, that may have changed in the time that this has progressed. But I also want to point out that just because we're rechartering this now, that does not mean that everybody has to live with it for 20 years. So this charter can change. That's exactly how we added Val at one point, and we added Sky at one point, is just, putting them on in addition to. So I really want to make sure that there's not any other categories to look at as well. And then I think what we can do to help clear up some of the things as far as finding that DAC representative is going ahead and almost doing some bullet points of kind of what we're looking for everyone. And then we can all share kind of our ideas of that too. I really, really appreciate the complexities of this conversation. I've always known that all of you held different kind of parts of beneficial users. And I'm glad that this was our opportunity to finally have people kind of talk that through a little bit. And I do want to get everybody about a 5-minute bio break here because we still have about 45 minutes left. So does everybody want to take a break for about 5 minutes, take a deep breath and come back, and then we'll tackle the next part of it? Does that sound good?
Yes.
It's 12:48. Why don't we say at 12:55 is when we will reconvene. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Val, do you have to head out now?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but
No,
I will make a commitment to look into what's been going on in this discussion. I feel this is an extremely important position to fill, and maybe it should be more specific, but most importantly, I think we know the poor underrepresented community, and we should have somebody on the seat.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we're excited to have you back.
Thanks. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
7 minutes goes by so quickly
I
when you're like
know.
rushing to change laundry or do whatever,
Yeah.
put food in your mouth.
I always, because I emerged from my cave, my office cave at that time. So I'm like running to the bathroom and everything. And everyone's like, Marina, I was like, I have 2 seconds, 2 seconds. Like, but if it's an emergency, let me
Don't
know.
talk to me. Don't talk to me.
Don't talk to me, but jabber me. So I don't know if you saw, Sarah also would like us to bind private users. So
Yeah.
maybe what we could also do, I've been trying to pull up my water code 10723, but it's taking forever to load. But maybe what we can do, we can come back and I'll share this with the Gspac next meeting. Every open seat that we have, similar to how we're going to do the bullet point for our disadvantaged community seat, just for have a bullet point for every.
Yeah, that makes
open
sense.
seat.
That makes sense. Yeah, that private user thing is a label that often got put on to when DWR would separate the categories.
Yeah.
So, and I believe that, I don't know if private users is the actual language in the legislation itself, but I know that it, like in the second generation of beneficial users, it was one of the categories. So, and then it defined, had different bullet points underneath it as well. So yeah, we could define that.
So I finally got it pulled up, our water code. So, well,
yeah, I don't think the categorization of it happened here. I think it was more of a DWR function. And again,
yeah.
it happened like in the second iteration of trying to describe or section out the different beneficial users and uses.
Mm-hmm.
But we can absolutely do that. That's a good idea.
Okay, perfect. So it is 12:57. I'm not the best at numbers, but we are a minute or two delayed from what we said. We welcome you all back from our bio break. So if you are back, please go ahead and turn on your screen. Hi, welcome back. Long time no see. And I am sharing my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool beans. Awesome. So we'll wait for more of our friends to start trickling in. Give it another 10 seconds or so. And for those folks that are that have the chat pulled up, I did put up the water code section for you all. If you're just interested in taking a gander at it and memorize it, there will be a quiz during our next G-Spec meeting. That's a joke. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I believe we have waiting on a few more folks, but let's go ahead and let's get started again. So thank you everyone for coming back. Glad we didn't lose you guys. So if you are back, go ahead and please turn on your screen so I know you're available so we can go ahead and continue on with this dialogue. Thank you. So I don't know if folks heard, so it was requested that we come up with some sort of bullet point of what we're looking for in terms of our open seats, especially the disadvantaged community. So we had some good dialogue. Clearly, we still have some things that we need to iron out in terms of filling up these open seats. Yes, it is a priority to fill these seats, but I want to make sure we fill them properly, right? And as Christy mentioned, we have the ability to go back and revisit the charter. We're not binded to it. But again, the sooner we can get these seats filled, the better engaged with our community and our diverse stakeholders that we can be. So what I'm planning on doing, and I want to know if this would be beneficial for you all. So similar to how we're going to fill out a bullet point of what we're looking for, how, what a disadvantaged community seat will look like for our Big Valley Basin. We'll go ahead and do that. I will go ahead and do that for every other open seat we have as well. So in terms of domestic well, what are we looking for? What kind of representation are we looking for? And then same with the private users. So there was a question, Sarah, I don't know if you're back yet, regarding private user. And Christy, do you want to go ahead and share what you shared with me?
Yeah, I was just, that is a term that it's how it got categorized under DWR. So what we can do, there's several bullet points that are under private user. The important point to make here though, is that the school district was part of this because, Kyle was on this because he was the facilities director. And it was what we were looking for are municipal entities that would use groundwater that were not anything tied to the county per se in any way. So the other alternate we had when we were looking at school district was the cemetery district. And that, didn't net us out something either. So one of the things that we wanted to do is just get people thinking, like, is there another entity? I think trying to tap the school district is going to be tough at best. They're struggling with so much right now. And really Kyle's role on this was because he was facilities director for it. So, are there others? And maybe that's one that gets eliminated and something else gets put in its place. But I can pull up what that private user category grouping is and find out what else is part of that.
Peter, go ahead.
The county school district, this is not Kelseyville School District, but the county, what do you call it, Board of Education, whatever, has a school on Argonaut Road and the highway. It's a special school. It's right there. It's in the middle of the valley. I'm sure they're supplied by a well. So that's a potential district, if you will, unlike the Kelseyville School District. And they may have more capacity for doing that. So
okay.
there's a suggestion.
Okay. Is it called LCOE? Is it Lake County Office of Education?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And if we open up that dialogue with them, maybe we could also open up the dialogue if they have any recommendations for a disadvantaged community seat. All right. So any other questions or comments regarding the rechartering and filling the open seats? If we need to add more seats, we're going to continue on with this discussion, coming back to the May G-Spec meeting. So if you have any ideas or if you have any folks who you think may be interested, please invite them to our May G-Spec meeting. Open up that dialogue. That would be great. So let's go ahead. If seeing none, pause, resume. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So, oh, Peter, were you going to say something?
Oh,
No, it's okay. I thought you were going to share your food with us. No, you're good. You're good. It is lunchtime. All right. So fun activity. G-Spec members, please utilize the chat box and put in the chat your level of agreement for your support or lack thereof or opinion on the level of agreement scale that we've been utilizing. So I'll give everyone about 5-10 seconds or so. We'll look at the chat. And again, just as a refresher, one is you fully endorse it. You love the level of agreement scale that we've been utilizing. Or 6, you don't prefer it. You'd rather do a different method. As we stated previous in this discussion, just from the input that I have received from the board of directors, the GSA, and then also just the G-Spec, a lot of folks really appreciate this method. Again, I think it does a great job of outlining, here's a simple number of this is what my input is, and then also just giving us the opportunity to elaborate on why you voted on what you voted. And again, when I say voted, see my air marks. So with that, so thank you, David. 2. And this slide, this is an opportunity for us just to see, again, the effectiveness of this level of agreement and guidance process. Do we want to continue utilizing this process in terms of voting on, what are we planning on doing in terms of implementation? So previously we used it for chapters, management actions, etc. But just as we continue on with the actual GSP implementation. Brenna.
Yeah, so my vote is a 2. I generally support it. I guess because language matters when we're getting into some of these things, I don't know if we can change some of the wording on 3 conditional agreement. I can support if some steps are taken now or in the future. I think that's too limiting given that we're using this scale on kind of a wide variety of things that we're voting on. I might wordsmith that a bit more to say, I support some elements of this or something like that, and maybe take out kind of the word steps or that sort of thing to make it a little more general and applicable across the board.
Thank you, Brenna. And I agree. I like that idea of making that modification and being more clear on that. All right. Any other comments or questions or levels of agreement that you wanted to put for the levels of agreement?
I actually used you all as a case study of levels of agreement working effectively well to reflect lots more than just the one or two answers that you can give to things. So people appreciate hearing about how it's worked successfully for all of you. And I want to thank you for embracing it, because it is a little different of an arrangement, but works effectively when you're trying to get a range of sentiments.
You want us to vote now?
You can certainly put yours in there with whatever you like into the chat box. You can enter it.
Yeah. And I like the idea of keeping it consistent, that, we've used this levels of agreement from the very start. I like the idea of keeping it consistent throughout. So it seems right now we are all in agreement that we appreciate and like the levels of agreement. But again, during our May G-Spec meeting, we can circle back to this. And, if anyone has any more thoughts or ideas, again, this is an opportunity for us to structure it, what would be best for us. But I agree, Christy, I think it's worked well for us. It was kind of confusing at first, but I think we've all gotten used to it at this point. And it's very easily identifiable and understood throughout the realm of GSP. Cool. All right. So again, this slide may look familiar for you all if you were able to join in on our GSP adoption discussion that we had at the end of January for our Board of Supervisors. So what are our next steps for our G-Spec? We've all talked about this, how it's going to transition from planning to implementation. And as I stated earlier in the discussion, we have multiple resources. We have the resources of our consultants, DWR, other GSAs out there. I'm really excited for this next phase of Sigma implementation, because there's going to be a lot more ability to network and to kind of take our time and lean on not only our community itself, but our surrounding GSAs, right? So doing more collaboration throughout the state and hearing what other people are doing, the resources available. So leaning on those resources and again, putting them in the right hands, which is you all. We understand that this has been a heavy lift. It's going to be a heavy lift, but I'm here to help you and, vice versa. So basically what we're going to be focusing on G-Spec 2.0, again, looking at the rechartering for our G-Spec implementation. We are in the early stages of that. Our annual report, again, due April 21st, 2022. We are on track of completing that and submitting that to DWR. Frequent board of director updates. So as the lead, I would go before the board and do an update, but I'm going to be leaning on you all to come with me and do an update to the board. So, if there's an area that we want to focus on, if Brenna, your group is doing some awesome work in terms of GSP implementation, Sarah, if your group is doing awesome work. So doing more of a team effort in terms of providing updates to the board. So Water Resources will serve as a liaison for that. But again, leaning on you all to highlight the needs, the ideas, the opinions, the comments from the groups that you represent. Of course, ongoing review of incoming data, leaning on each other to share available data, see what data we're missing, and doing, again, just that sharing that we've been able to do in the past, and focusing on that, especially is doing that more collaboration in terms of data management and review. Identify new areas for analysis data or collaboration, focus subcommittee work for financing and potential projects, general public education on groundwater GSP implementation. This is a priority for me, for this group, is really doing as much education outreach as we can. We started during the COVID pandemic. Unfortunately, we found that has been difficult to engage with the public. We acknowledge not everyone in the county has reliable, internet, and then also making sure that we have resources available for the greater communities that we have. So ensuring that we have resources, translated in Spanish and having translation services available. DWR has some resources that we can utilize, that we have, that we're planning on utilizing. But again, just leaning on you all. So what outreach materials that you can help create and develop or implement for the users that you represent, right? So leaning on you all, your creativity and your expertise to do this. Will and I are the ones that are working on this groundwater program. We have a lot of energy, but well, it's a big task that we have. So again, just really leaning on you all for any support and assistance that you'll be able to provide. And we're open to ideas. You know, we're very flexible. We're open to trying new things. So even if it hasn't been done before, if you have an idea, let's talk about it. Let's do it. You know, making sure that we lean on each other. And then again, just outreach and engagement with a specific audience. So are we missing someone? Did we try this outreach event and we didn't get the feedback or the participation that we required? What can we do different? I still really want to do the tailgating, you know, Big Valley outreach event. I really want to go to some of the farmers markets that are held in the Big Valley area. I know that the Big Valley small farm tours is a thing. So trying to coordinate with those groups and other outreach events, the school, to do these outreach and engagement events. So hearing from you all, hearing any ideas that you may have. So are there any questions or comments on our key focus areas for G-Spec in 2022? And we will be utilizing this, you know, these bullet points here to include in our rechartering document. So these are our focuses for, again, G-Spec 2.0. Nothing? All right, so let's go ahead and move over to item 7 on our agenda, which is public comments. Do we have any members of the public who would like to share any public comments? Any G-Spec members have anything that they would like to share as well? Oh, you guys are making this too easy.
Marina, I will take a quick point of clarification about the process for this charter document and how it goes forward. I know that we were going to tackle it much like we did in the original charter, where now we go back and we draft the charter language, send it out to all of the prospective G-Spec members, because technically this isn't an entity yet until we charter you, but having them put input back directly to you, Marina, on a one-on-one basis until there's a document that's set and ready and everybody's comfortable with, and then it would go for board resolution. Do you want to have that done by the May meeting, or did you want to come back at the May meeting to discuss it more? It can be done on a one, you could even call a special meeting in between since there's quarterlies. But how did you want it done by the May meeting, or did you want to have it still in play at the May meeting?
So ideally you would have had it done by the May meeting, but based off the discussion today, I think that we need to have more dialogue on who we need to have at the table. So what I'm planning on doing is I can have a draft of the draft completed for the May meeting. We can go over, you know, some of the edits and additions that we discussed during today. But what I want to really focus on during that May meeting is, you know, again, if you have someone you think should be at the table, please feel free to invite them to that May meeting. Let them see the structure, the format of our G-Spec. But I want us to dive deeper into what are those open seats and who are we missing? What are the specifics that we're looking for? So I will also bring those bullet points that we talked about for those open seats that we have. If you have another idea for an open seat, I know I also talked about having an advisory, some advisory seats on there as well. So just not necessarily on the G-Spec, but having, you know, putting in the charter, you know, someone from environmental health will be actively engaged in these discussions, someone from planning, cannabis, etc., land use. But if you feel the need, that needs to be a seat on its own in the G-Spec, let's do that. So I want to focus on that specific section for our May G-Spec meeting, but I do want to bring a draft to the May G-Spec, but I don't want to necessarily approve anything, as I don't think we have those names yet that we need to fill those seats. And I don't want to rush it. We've already dealt with the rush timeline. I want to make sure that we do this right.
Okay.
So does that sound good for everyone?
Yeah, one of the other things just to be thinking about too, I don't think it needs to be any kind of big process, but what is the process by which we put someone onto the G-Spec? So if we're coming back in May and there are people there who are interested in doing it, it may be a moot point because we can put them, you know, we can put everybody together at that time. But if we're going to go ahead and get this by board resolution that the G-Spec exists, and then we want to add someone, what's the process of adding? You know, how do you want that to look, essentially?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, Christy. So how I would like to see this, just to make sure that it's as transparent as possible. You know, what I would like to see is, since I'm the lead, I know during GSP development, we were using the generic water resources email, but You all have my email. I will have it available here as well, and we'll make sure we update that on the website. If someone is interested in serving on a seat, I would like them to email myself with just a very brief statement in writing of what seat they want to fill and why they feel that they would be appropriate to fill it. Then when I have that, that submittal or that recommendation nomination, or if you have a nomination, and of course you don't blindside anyone if they're like, yeah, okay, let's try this out. You can go ahead and nominate someone. That way I can bring those recommendations in writing to the G-Spec, and then we can all look at it together. So it's not just a decision of my own or anyone's own. We bring it together as a group and we talk about it. And then similar to how we did previously with Val and Sky, we can go around and we can do the levels of agreement if we want to do a roll call, etc. But I will be placing that in the charter document to make sure it's a streamlined process and it's clear across the board. And then also, if we feel like we need to add a seat or, you know, make modifications to the charter, that will be included in there as well. Does anyone have any comments on that? Do you think that would be a good process? Do you have other recommendations? No. You can do like an interpretive dance too to make it funny, or you have to go up and tell a joke. We'll see about that. All right, so thank you for that question, Christy. Are there any other public comments? I'm glad that you guys laugh at things I say. Go ahead, David.
I just wanted to ask about the annual report that's coming up. Is one, who's doing the work on that and how is it going? And is this group going to have any involvement or, you know, are we going to review it or anything before it gets submitted?
Go ahead,
Do
Christy.
you want to chime in? So it's the tech team who's working on it. So it's your same team that did it as the GSP. And the good thing is it's not going to cost anybody anything because it's encumbered under the funds for the GSP development for this first one. I know that Eddie is targeting the week of, I believe it's the second week, March 7th, just in time for Groundwater Awareness Week it is, to have the draft of that done. And I know, you know, it's due April 1st. So to the degree, it really is an inventory of things that have already been in the GSP. And so as far as like what his needs may be, what I might do is I might ask him to just send everybody on Gspac a little note about kind of what that entails and if there's anything that he would need. I have not developed an annual report myself, so I can't say, but I know that March 7th is the date that he's targeting the team to have all the component parts done by. So let me have Eddie give everyone a report out. I'll write that down to have him do that.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you for the question, David. All right, any other comments or questions for the public comment period?
Marina, I've got a question, whether or not this is appropriate time or not, I'm not sure, but would it be possible, throughout this process, I think we've kind of established that this is a pretty healthy groundwater basin. There's been a lot of talk about the stream flows during springtime and the hitch. We've got Adobe or Highland Springs Reservoir out there. Would it be possible for you guys, your department, to give a little rundown of what the obstacles are for holding water back in Highland Springs to where you could increase the stream flows during that hitch flow period? Just seems like a whole bunch of the effort that's going to go into this project down the road is kind of seems like it's gravitating around the water flows in the springtime. And it also kind of seems like there might be a real easy solution to that. And I don't, you know, I'm not aware of what the legal obstacles would be or what it would take to change the spillway to where water could be held back and increase flows during that time.
So what we could do during our next G-Spec meeting is we can provide just a very brief overview of, you know, what the procedures is, what the impacts are, et cetera, of, you know, Highland Springs, Adobe Creek as well. And that way we can at least open up that dialogue. And then if there's any additional questions or if you guys are looking for something else, we can have that then. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, of course. Any other comments or questions for our public comment period? No? All right. Here's how you can contact me. Oh, sorry, that's on the next slide. Our future Gspac meetings. So save the date. I believe everyone should have the calendar invite for the Gspac meeting. So our next one is going to be May 20th, 2022, August 19th, November 18th. We're going to stick to the time frame of 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. I know from previous Gspac meetings, we were able to have two that were in a hybrid format. Right now, we're going to keep this virtual format, but stay tuned. If it comes out to May and things are a little bit safer, maybe we'll try the hybrid format again. Hopefully one day we'll all be able to meet in person, but it sounds like everyone really appreciates that hybrid format. So let me know if you have any questions on that. And again, feel free to encourage folks to sign up for the Stay Connected. That's where you'll get the routine reminders of the agenda, any meeting material, but again, this is all available on the Water Resources website. The agendas are posted 72 hours in advance, etc. So those are going to be some fun times. Join us for those meetings. And even though we have these outline meetings, if we deem appropriate, we could always call upon a special meeting, which we will decide upon on that meeting that we are talking about it. So right now we don't have any special meetings planned, as stated earlier in the discussion. May discussion, our May G-Spec meeting, we will look at the draft rechartering of the G-Spec charter document. And then also we will have the bullet points for the open seats. Now, here's my contact information, which you all have, but it's available. So again, that we previously did, we had the water.resources generic email where you would send any of your public comments to, but as lead of the G-Spec, please go ahead and reach out to me directly, marina.delajanis@lakecountyca.gov. It's a doozy, but it's also on the Water Resources website. But of course, if you reach out to us at the generic Water Resources email, it'll get to me anyhow. William does an awesome job of updating our GSP website where all the information is there, readily available, previous meetings, and then you can always give us a call or come say hi to us on the 3rd floor of the county courthouse. If you have any questions, I'm here to help you all. I'm here to serve you guys. And again, I just really appreciate all your guys' input and your time and your commitment to this. It's a big task that we have ahead of us, but we're going to do it and we're doing it. So with that being said, any other final comments before we adjourn our meeting?
You can release everybody to their 3-day weekend.
Yay! Yes, everyone have a great weekend. Thank you so much. I'm here if you need me, and I'll see you all in May. And meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.